Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ravi sir, for having such a wonderful discussion. So now, moving ahead, Namaste from India. It's my pleasure hosting this panel today with all the amazing personalities I have with me. Today, our topic is safety and regulations on this magical science called as cell culture and cultivated meat. I am Parul Soni, Chief Business Officer with Clear Meat. So to give a background here, cultivated meat, lab-grown meat, kinder meat, good karma meat, synthetic meat, there are so many names which is given to this product. However, this product has been invented years ago, became famous recently with so many groups working for and against, because people have a lot of questions, and the questions generally are about, they're worried. They are worried, and they're worried that when this product will become launched, whether the people who are going to consume it will have the required, regulations and the safety measures or not. So today we are discussing about, what kind of regulations and safety measures are required, what other countries are working towards it. And that is how our panel will follow. Today we have Yoonchan with us, the CEO of Everything But from South Korea. We have Dr. Megumi, President of JACA, Japan. We have Ms. Chinmayee, Managing Director of Food Chain ID India. Dr. Rohit, Senior Scientist from PETA, India. And Dr. Nilesh Amritkar, President of Food Scientists and Technologists India Community, as well as MD of Envirocare. So to start with this, I will start with you, Yoonchan. Please introduce yourself, of course. And then, being a founder of the cultivated meat company in your own country, which is South Korea, how is your experience? And in your experience, how South Korea thinks about this novel product? What exactly, from the regulations point of view, South Korea is doing?
Hi, my name is Yoonchan Hwang. I'm CEO of the Everything But. We make cultivated chicken to make pet food. So not only the cats and dogs, so it could be multiple different things. So answering your question, being cultivated meat startup in South Korea is kind of tough. In a way, investors are not fully aware of what cultivated meat is. Like, also is similar in other countries, but now there's a hype of it. So all the large corporates in South Korea, LG, Samsung, SK, all those like big corporates, even Hyundai is interested in cultivated meat. They are reviewing if they want to invest or enter into this sector or not. Regulatory point-wise, it is tough, but we have a guideline just published, I think, last January or December, I think. The application for dossier cost about 37,000 USD for just to apply it, and it requires multiple different requirements. One is allergy test, which will be a problem because I don't think there's a standardized allergy test for food or pharmaceutical purpose wise. It's really tough to say like what animal will be, human will be allergic to, because that will be depends on the species, like case by case. And another one is toxicity test. So cultivated meat companies, probably all of them, vision and mission is not to kill the animal to produce the meat. But toxicity test wise, we need to do the animal testing, and some other parts are very tough. So those two are the major thing that I'm concerned in the like regulation part of the Korea. Another part is reviewing length. So Korean Ministry of the Food and Drug, they say it will take up to 270 days of the business working days, which is like more than a year. So being a startup, we need to spend about 37,000 USD and then wait more than a year just to get the answer. They say it could be less than a year. It could be right away if everything is like on par as they asked. But that's going to be pretty challenging for startup to apply and get regulated for cultivating meat.
Thank you very much. Like, I completely understand, that this kind of fees, if levied on startups, can definitely act as a hindrance. So moving to Miss Megumi, Dr. Megumi, similarly, I would, as an active member of JACA, Japan Association of Cellular Agriculture, I would like to know what is your perspective on cultivated meat, and what specific or what significant things Japan is doing in this area.
Okay, so hi. The JACA is a Japan-based industry organization for cellular agriculture, which have around 60 corporate and academic members. And it hosts a cellular agriculture working team for the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. And myself is one of the board members of board advisors for Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industries promotion strategy for biomanufacturing industry. And regarding how the relations of Japanese market and cellular agriculture is that we believe that our Japanese technology in regenerative medicine area or cell therapy area, as well as there are the worst there are the largest number of Michelin-starred chefs in Japan, which means that we have a kind of like soft power in providing better food experience. So we think that this asset could be leveraged in the cellular agriculture field. And the Japanese companies are JACA currently have like 60 corporate members, and 13 of them is international or domestic startups, which actually directly engages in the development of cultivated food. But for other like over 40 companies are mainly suppliers for growth factors or bioreactor, or even like 7-Eleven retails. So maybe good part of it is that the Japanese market or Japanese stakeholders can support cellular agriculture in a various perspective, because we have a lot of stakeholders, players from the different area. But maybe the less strong part of this fact is that because we have only 2 or 3 domestic startup which directly engages in the R&D of this sector, government sometimes less motivated because there are only like 2 startups actually to do the development. So what the JACA's role, one of the JACA's role is that showing the government that no, it's not only for the 2 domestic startups, but for over 50 corporate Japan-based corporates, as well as overseas companies which would like to collaborate with the Japanese partners. So that's the kind of like overall status right now in Japan.
Wow. So I must say that Japan is working in a very, very organized way where, the government is only involved, and government is pushing these startups, which is somehow opposite to other countries, which is happening. So Japan is again, working in a very, very innovative way. So considering from how Japan is working, I would now move to Dr. Rohit Bisht, and would, the kind of work. So he comes from, Dr. Rohit, you come from PETA India, and you are already collaborating with a lot of Indian, government agencies. As per your experience, what India is doing in this sector, how India is being different than other countries in this particular sector?
So thank you. For India, I will say cultivated meat industry is at an initial stage. As you know that we don't have a clear defined regulatory guidelines for the cultivated meat, but I will say the government will also helping in the different phases of the development of cultivated meats. For example, for FBS replacement, which is still a challenge, we have regular meetings with the regulatory bodies and stakeholder companies We have communicated the issues of the stakeholder companies and the issues with the FBS, with the regulatory bodies, and they are very open to these type of alternative options and innovative ideas. We have submitted technical recommendations to the regulatory bodies to include this alternative medium concept in the regulatory protocols, test protocols, and regulatory books like Indian Pharmacopoeia Commissions, Indian Pharmacopoeias. And we believe that in coming months or years, you will see these type of alternative media concept will be highlighted in the test protocols or regulatory guidelines. That is very important. The first step or acceptance of this clear media and regulatory guideline. Second step is that, like my fellow panelist Yoonchan said, like toxicity studying, what type of testing is required, animal safety testing is required. Initially, we don't have any expert working groups which are dealing with the alternatives. Now we have, like PETA India proposed alternative expert working group for alternatives, and we now have a expert working groups, Indian Pharmacopoeias, which includes the Indian drug regulators as well as the toxicologists experts from different areas. So now the companies have the expert working groups where they can reach and then clear their queries regarding what type of safety testings they can required if they don't want to go for animal testing, whether there is a viable or feasible alternatives is applicable, available, or under the development which they can use, because the animal affair is also very costly, you know. So regarding the testings and regarding the research and development, we see this type of development from the regulatory bodies till now.
So you have touched upon a very, very important topic, which is the FBS usage or the cell growth media usage. I mean, and this is definitely one of the, I would not say the hindrance, but I would say a very important pillar on which this particular industry is standing, because the cost is actually, so the cost, as well as some of the countries have the regulations where, this kind of material cannot go into food, eatables. So moving to, Chinmayee ma'am, because you come from the Food Chain India ID, the name only suggests, as well as, you are working with a lot of food companies, with the regulatory bodies. In your experience, can you just let us know that what kind of issues government bodies, as well as the startups, but, we'll start with government bodies, what kind of issues they are facing while creating the regulation for this particular category? Ma'am, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Parul. Congratulations on the second version of this conclave. Happy to be part of it. This is anyways a novel food, and every novel food will have its own set of, approval requirement. It needs to have a safety study for consumption, molecular characterization, nutritional composition, toxicology, allergen, identification, biological, chemical contaminants, etc. Now, the challenge is that in some regulations, like in New Zealand, it is said that this has to be given in 14 months. All this information has to be submitted in 14 months, because the approval process is, involves like letter of no objection certificate for human, for human food, a pre-market assessment for use of new, animal food, and then the environmental assessment. Now, all these things are part of the entire submission of the application for being, called that as a novel food. Now, while this is being done, so, when we look at the US regulation, in USA, there are two bodies that control this whole regulation. One body is the US FDA, and the second one is USDA FSIS, which is the Food Safety and Inspection Services. Now, the first part of USDA is, wherein they are, their jurisdiction is pre-harvest of sale, and the rest FSIS is the post-harvest of sale. And in that one, there are multiple, food safety issues, environmental issues that may come in. So whether now, maybe when we come to, Indian scenario, there would be multiple stakeholders who would be part of, just like USA, who would be part of the whole process of framing the regulation. Ministry of Agriculture, FSSI, maybe, Environmental Ministry, Factory Act, because of the bioreactors that are in place. So there would be multiple agencies that would play a role in defining the regulation when it comes to India. I mean, and also maybe, you know, the nutrition aspect, like for example, in the bioreactors, genetic and epigenic drift happens, you know, because of the you know, the load of protein that goes in, and this influence the protein content in the product, which needs a critical evaluation from safety of sales, whether, you know, from ingredients perspective, etc. So there would be multiple agencies that would come in place. And I think right now we are at a stage wherein we are gathering together in evaluating what are the areas in which which agencies has to come in place, and then frame the regulations.
I completely agree. And if I have to frame my question again, or I would say, the if I have to conclude what you said, to create a stronger framework, we need a lot of agencies which will come into place, and then start building the blocks of the entire framework, which will then categorize that this particular novel food is consumable or it is safe to eat. Moving to Nilesh sir, coming from the background which Nilesh sir comes, and building on to what Dr. Rohit and Chinmayee ma'am has said, sir, in your experience, can you let us know that what kind of consumer acceptance parameters, behaviors, tests, which should be incorporated in this behavior to make it stronger, to make it more transparent?
Yeah, so thank you, Parul, for the opportunity to speak on your platform, the second Sustainable Meat Symposium. Must congratulate you on the excellent work that you guys are doing. It's quite encouraging and a very learning experience for people like us. So we are called as experts, but
Thank
we
you,
are
sir.
actually learning. We are learning from other experts that are there in the field. So thank you for that opportunity. Now, the point which Dr. Rohit has raised, or even Chinmayee has raised, I think there's a lot of opportunity for lot of food science scientists and food technology students and researchers, as well as the industry. And I can see that there would be lot of patents, research papers, and innovations coming up in this area of cultivated meat, especially when this cultivated meat, I would categorize that there are three major challenges: the cost part, the taste part, and safety part, which ultimately arrives at your question of the acceptability of by the people. First of all, when it comes to the cost, we all know that in 2013, actually, the first burger patty was produced at around something like 300,000 US dollars, and that were just few strands of the muscles of the beef that was sold. And commercially, only after, I think, 9 years, an American company sold some cultured meat in Singapore, and the restaurant opened in 2011. So after around 10 years, the first cultured meat was opened. So this not only is about the cost, but also about the acceptability by the people who are going to actually consume it or buy it. And the acceptability comes not just by the cost part of it, but by two more points: is the test and the safety part of it. So when it comes to test is not just the tongue test, but also the test in the mind. People have a perceived test, and then the people have a actual test. So the perceived test is that of that, okay, this is religiously a veg non-veg product, or it is religiously a halal product, or a vegan non-vegan product, or something like that, that whether this is not by cutting the animal, so can it be sattvic, which is a sort of a much lesser evil of eating meat. So that taste perception is something which people would generally look at from the acceptability point of view. And the third point is that of the safety, that uh, something that is being grown in the laboratory and something that is grown on the fields, the ranges, the ranches that are there, where the animals are free to breed and free to roam around, and then that creates that good hormones in those animals, so that when they are eaten, those good hormones are technically, non-technically passed on to the people who eat them. So all these things will actually come to the mind of a person, that whether this lab grown, artificially grown will be safe for human consumption or not. And of course, we can dwell a little bit more into the safety part of it, since I come from the background of the laboratory. We have been analyzing more than 1 million samples in last couple of years, last few years especially, and we have seen wide range of parameters, specifically with respect to contaminants or adulterations that come up in the food. And every year there are some new molecules that are getting added. It's not only about pesticide residues, but it is also about some persistent organic pollutants. So when we are going to artificially develop or cultivate a meat in the laboratory, the chemicals that are going to be used, the cross contamination, not only from biological point of view, but cross contamination from the chemical molecules that would be used in the production in the laboratory, would also play a very significant role. Because when there might be a good replacement for FBS, which I think Clear Meat already has a product to replace FBS, but then not everybody will have the access to a vegetarian FBS. So in that scenario, people would think about, okay, when I'm taking a cell line, which is obviously from a biopsy of a larger animal or a larger breed, what will come through that particular cell line. So things like viruses or some contamination which probably is still unknown. And having said this, the thought came to my mind the other day was, what about prions, the infectious particles? Because that we don't know whether that would be present in there or not. So it would definitely require a lot of analytical support, lot of analytical background of which cell line, what cell line to be taken out as a part of biopsy, and how it will be grown into the chemicals in the test tubes or in the petri plates in the laboratory. And when they are being grown, what would be the effect of temperature, or what would be the effect of light on the DNAs that would be multiplying. So we all have studied light and dark repair mechanisms of DNA. So I don't know whether that would actually affect the DNA in the manner where there could be possible mutations that can come up. So lot of thoughts comes when we talk about culture mates, and the only solution to this is research. And the kind of work people like Yoonchan or Megumi's companies are doing, or even Clear Meat is doing, I think that sets a clear tone on how we'll be able to come up with proper protocols, proper guidelines, which will actually help frame the regulations not only for the production, but also for how safe it would be for human consumption. A bit longer explanation to your question, but I thought that this should be all said. Points should be mentioned.
No, I completely agree to this, sir. All these, and there are many more, there are issues with, will there be a, is it going to be a cancerous thing? Will we get cancer? Will we, like the consumer will get pathogens, entering their body? So definitely these are real issues which, today's consumer is asking, which shows that consumer is definitely interested. But obviously, the consumer wants to get the proper knowledge about it. So before I answer this on behalf of ClearMeat, I would want Yoonchan, because he is actually a scientist and working on this product, to answer a few of the questions. So can you please help us bust some of the myths which people have regarding the cultivated meat as a product, that what will happen if they consume it?
So it's basically same as the meat, but the concern that some of people might ask is there's some cell lines are genetically modified, but it's usually I don't think that's going to transfer to human. And most of the so some of the challenges, some of the strategy that what happens in Asian parts usually is we are trying not to use any genetic modification. That's due to, like, usually the voice of all the guideline of the stem cell therapy, and not only for the food. Usually GMO is a huge no-no in Korea part. So that's one other thing. And usually if we do gene editing, it's more of not adding the foreign gene to the cell. Is what my company is focusing on, removing the gene that will cause some of the problem or will enhance some of the cell performance. So we have two different track with the non-genetically modified, like making spontaneously immortalized, or genetically modified. Another part is we got to understand this is meat, and I don't think anyone will eat it raw, except maybe it's for fish cultivated meat. But chicken, beef, pork, everything will be cooked. So I don't think there will be much of the problem. But just saying it from my thought, until we test it out, I don't think I will be able to say certain on this part. But for my opinion, I think most of them will be safe. Every cultivated meat will be pathogen free, because even one E. coli in the bioreactor will ruin whole bioreactor or one batch of it. So that's one of the things every single cultivated meat companies are concerned and working best on to not adding a pathogen to any other bacteria to the bioreactor.
Agreed. And adding some of the points, also, as one of the leadership team from cultivated meat company in India, is that as you correctly said, that the pathogens cannot enter, because if pathogens enter into the lab facility, the entire batch will go bad. So obviously we cannot, the meat only will never grow, so there cannot be any pathogens. But there were definitely very important points which Nilesh sir has raised, and we, as a group, as a community, we have to work on it. Now, going back to one of the things which you have said is that South Korea is gung ho, is focused on non-GMO products. I know that India is focused on non-GMO products, which is different about India than some of the countries, which probably have, I will not say that they are okay with genetically modified products, but probably they have not created very specific regulation on genetically modified or non-genetically modified products. Going to Rohit in this case, Rohit, can you just let us know that other than GMO, non-GMO, can you let us know that how India is different from the framework point of view, how the procurement will happen? Because I understand, from my understanding, I know that some of the countries are working on food security, but I don't think so that India for this particular segment is only working on food security. So how exactly India is working, as per your experience, working with the FSSAI and other government officials?
With respect to cultivated meat, we need like there's a proposals which we have submitted with the recommendations with the regulatory bodies about the procurements of different material used in the cultivated meat, its import and exports, including the vendor qualifications. But still, like it is in the process with the communications with the regulators, and with the procurements, we don't have any like clear guidelines, particularly focused to the cultivated meat. We have GMOs, but these GMOs are very specific to the crops only, where we have listed only 1 or 12 specific GMOs, but we are mostly focused on the non-GMOs product in cultivated meat. So regarding the procurement, export and imports, we're still in process and communication with regulators.
Wonderful. All right. Okay. Moving to Megumi, Megumi, can you let us, because I understand that JACA is working so strongly in the, in not only connecting the Japanese companies, but also connecting, the global companies across the world, and creating a community there. Because, and I'm sure, that during this process, you must have connected with a lot of consumers, a lot of, other people who are not belong to this specific segment. As per you, what is the consumer acceptance, emotion for this particular product? What Japan has done, and how the other Asian countries and the consumers from this specific countries are doing? Is there any research which has been happened, and what the research says?
Okay, thank you for the question. So I have a list of data in front of me that which shows the consumer acceptance of several countries. For example, Japan, the latest data shows 45% of people would like to try cultivated meat at least once. And in the similar research, I found in Korea, there are like 90% of people would like to try that. It's not in Asian country. I don't know about other figures in Asian countries, but for example, in the US, it depends on the design of the research. It's about like 45 to 90% of people would like to try at least once. Even Italy, over 50% of people would like to try that. So actually, I mainly communicate with Japan-based like consumers and farmers. So for other countries like Korea, I would like to ask Yoonchan-san's opinion. But the Japanese market is relatively the lower part of acceptance in the universe. And regarding the, I would like to also touch on some topics raised by Dr. Nilesh-san. But so currently in Japan, the Food Safety Standard Division is currently transferred from Ministry of Health to Consumer Acceptance Agency. The reason why is because the Ministry of Health is so exhausted to deal with like COVID situation. So they decided to remove the food safety part to the Consumer Affairs Agency, which has has a stronger pressure from consumer acceptance point of view. So some people might think that this transfer may affect the novel food standard of Japan. And also currently we have one incident, which is very currently a large incident, which is happening not in cellular agriculture field, but health conscious food. So the Kobayashi Pharmaceutical Company has been selling red yeast rice based health supplement, and there were 4 death cases reported like a few days ago. And the Novel Food Safety Division became so busy right now. Like they've started to review thousands of existing health food supplement submission cases so that this won't happen again. And many in this internet media, I saw a lot of like internet media articles, and many says that maybe during the manufacturing process there were some unexpected materials was born in the manufacturing process. And so maybe this point will also affect the safety standards or regulation for the cell-based food as well. And of course, we cannot be sure 100% about like what is contained in even for the existing food. So showing so maybe what JACA's communication strategy for this novel food area is that to convey the government that in parallel with the promoting like novel food technology, like R&D of this sector, we should also put a lot of resource in the food safety assessment or assessment part. I mean, food safety like research for this novel food area, because if the novel food can contribute to the future food supply chain, it should be safely evaluated and implemented correctly in the social in the Japanese market. And currently, the government officers are so resource scarce. So I hope it is also happening in the US as well. But yeah, in parallel with the R&D, we should also put more focus on the safety assessment research sector. That's my current view right now.
No, I agree with what you're saying, and that is what I wanted to tell from the understanding which I have got from Tiamit's side is that India definitely has a very strong, though as Dr. Bisht has said, that we do not have a very clear regulation in place, but the mandate is very clear that the food safety comes before food security, at least in India as of now. And also there is one thing which I learned from from the readings which I had and from my earlier conversation with Yoon is that the procurement part, or I'll say the ingredients which will go into the manufacturing of this particular product also need to be food grade, which I believe is also the case in India as well. India also believes that whatever ingredients are going to move into the manufacturing of cultivated meat has to be food grade, and for that a very strong, a bigger framework which requires the procurement part, how the procurement will happen, how the waste management will happen. So we are working on that segment. Also to touch upon the FBS, which Dr. Bisht also has checked, which Nilesh sir also has checked, that definitely, at least in India, and I believe in South Korea as well, from the food safety point of view, they would need a cell growth media which does not include serum, or a cell growth media which is a food grade. So these are two of the points from India's side. Now, building on what I said, I would probably move to Chinmayee ma'am and to Nilesh sir, both together, and then, you both can let us know that, how in a broader perspective in India, and not just in India, but globally also, that what should be the ideal framework? What should be the ideal agencies which should work? From Nilesh sir, you can let us know what kind of ideal tests, tests like toxicology test or maybe gene modification test or something like that. What kind of tests are required? What kind of agencies are required? What should be the steps on which government should focus upon? And then we can have, I would say, a ideal framework which can be then shared across, at least in our community. So I'll ask Chinmayee ma'am to start.
I think Nilesh can start because that's his area of expertise on toxicology. Nilesh, would you like to start?
Well, frankly, my area is not toxicology. It's more of a microbiology. But over a period of time, whatever chemical analysis that we have been doing, or the microbiological analysis that we have been doing, have been correlated to toxicological concerns. So whatever just now Megumi-san said about the recent novel food safety that has erupted in Japan, I think it is also a sign for all of us, while we are developing a framework to come up with a more stronger and stricter guidelines, so that ultimately in the pursuit of coming up with novel foods, we should not be affecting the food the human safety point of view. So having said this, when we are using a media, I'm just trying to go down, being a scientist, I cannot go broader, I need to go deep into the things. So when we use the media to grow culture or grow sales, you definitely would have certain components which would have its long lasting chemical effects as a part of physiological disintegration when it is consumed by the human body. So for example, there might be the use of antibiotics in the media that is used, so as to prevent any contaminations of fungi or yeast or the bacteria. So what happens to that particular antibiotic residues, if are they getting getting taken over by the cells that are getting produced? Similarly, see, when I was talking about perceived test or perceived sensories of a meat, people like to have that red color, which is that blood color, or they would like to have that brownish color, pink color meat to come up. So while we are doing that in terms of growing internally on the in the petri plates or in flasks, how would we bring in those colors? So whether there would be some artificial colors that would be used or natural colors, synthetic colors that would be used, so as to give that texture and that color to the meat product. Texture also comes because of certain proteins, certain amino acid sequences in certain ways, and this can also be a part of interesting study to check on whether how toxicologically it would be relevant when it is being taken and digested by human beings. So in fact, when we are talking about the culturing in a laboratory, there are a lot of chemicals also that are coming up nowadays, like called as PFAS, perfluoroalkyl substances. So they are coming out of almost nowhere and everywhere. So, and in fact, they are called as nowhere chemicals. So when they are being used, when this is being produced from the laboratory, probably the concentrations might be somewhat in on a higher side. So this would lead to toxicological challenges. And that's the reason I said at the start of my talk was it's a huge opportunity for the food scientist and food technologist. And I can see next 10 years there would be hundreds and thousands probably different patents and research papers coming up, which will only instill more questions in our minds and will help us deep dive more into the food safety and a part of the cultured meat program.
Thank
Chinmayee
you.
ma'am.
Thank you. And honestly, like, let me, start from where Megumi, said about the, acceptance of cultured meat with food, with the consumers. And I was reading a report, and it was not just the acceptance of cultured meat, but also people want to know what part of the animal I'm consuming. Am I consuming breast? Am I consuming thigh? Am I consuming, liver? What it is. So it has gone to that level that it's just not the animal one, but then which is the part that I'm consuming one. And I come from the food safety background, and definitely food safety for cultured meat is a very deep topic of research. And when we say it's not just the bacteria or microorganism contamination, but the multifold that it happens with. So now let's start with genetic alteration. So I mean, you ask a question about non-GMO, and it's like, generally when we say non-GMO, we talk about only the crops, but there is GM salmon, right? So GM salmon is being used, being cultivated in Norway, being, consumed in USA. So now if there is GM salmon used as a base raw material, then is it getting translated? Is it getting transferred into the cultured meat? So genetic alterations apart from the normal ones. The second one is, use of advantageous agents. So for example, use of mycoplasma. So mycoplasma, we all know that it has got small bacteria in 5 to 30%. So one part is that the bacterium produced while producing the meat, and the second part is when the food is after production, after packing, when it is up to the consumer, because it doesn't have its immunity system and this thing. So how it will take care of the micro load post packing. So that becomes, another aspect. Then the safety of raw components and, while making the culture. I mean, to give you an example, there are like, many growth factors are present in the media. So for example, insulin. Now these insulins are degraded in the stomach by proteases and cannot be absorbed in our systematic circulation as fully active protein. Now, when we are having, presence of digestion resistant proteins in the form of cultured meat, which it can lead to toxicity and allergenicity. And this is considered as one of the possible, maybe let's say, element of safety because it's not, getting digested. So similarly, we have scaffolds, we have microbarriers and so on. So it's taking the point of Dr. Nilesh, it's a good study. It's not right to say it's bad because we don't know what is really, because the study doesn't exist. So there is a possibility things are perfectly fine. We just need the evidence. So that is where I think all relevant community has to come together and take their own responsibility in terms of evaluating its the impact on human health and look at it, because hunger, I mean, there is an emotional quotient when we say that, animal killing, slaughtering, etc. If we leave that apart, but then the food security exists, the element of the amount of the time duration exists. Now, you take 2 years to raise buffalo, goat, etc. Then you have 2 months to raise the bird, and whereas a lab-grown meat is available in 2 weeks of time. So considering all these parameters, definitely it's not right. It is important to study further, evaluate its utility, and then go further, rather than someone saying, okay, no, it's not possible. So I think as a scientist, let's shake hand in doing our own study and evaluating, coming together, and really evaluating it scientifically. That's from my side.
No, this is such a beautiful answer to what both of you have given, and definitely see, this is such a novel thing coming up. We are creating meat without even animal. This doesn't sound even possible to some of the people when I talk to them. They're like, even if this is possible. So when we are doing something like this, there has to be some questions, and there has to be the regulations, very strong regulations, which will come, which will protect the consumer rights also. So we have a lot of questions from the audience right now, but there is one question I specifically want to take here is that what strategies a cultivated meat company like ours, Clear Meat, like Yoonchan, and other so many companies which are coming up, what kind of strategies these companies should implement to transparently communicate their adherence to the ethical as well as the regulatory point of view, the animal welfare point of view. What is your opinion on this? Like, everyone can give their opinions. Ma'am, you can start.
I could start.
Okay.
You're muted. So should I?
I said,
Okay.
let the manufacturer start first, because let it come from the horse's mouth.
Yoon, please, yes.
Yeah.
What do you think we
So-
should, companies like us should do to create more transparency in the system?
That's really tough, because if you think about IP and everything, you don't want to reveal every single stuff that's going in, because that's one of the secret ingredient that you are going to need. But one thing consumers and then other part of the community need to understand is probably every single cultivated meat company want to use food grade ingredient. It's not only for the consumption and the safety part, it's for the pricing part, because we need to make media as cheap as possible. And in order to do that, instead of using sigma like glucose, we gotta use regular tabletop sugar, or instead of using refined NaCl, we just use table salt. So that's some of the part that we need to cut down the cost. So in order to do that, we need to use every single part of the ingredient to be food graded. So that's the one thing that is common in every single cultivated meat company.
No, I agree. And I very strongly agree on the point, that the media has to improve. We cannot be dependent on FBS, because obviously from the cost point of view, but because of the import regulations point of view as well. I mean, there are almost 80 to 90% countries are only importing, and importing, adds to the cost as well. And animal welfare, so that this point is definitely there with FBS. So we definitely have to come up with FBS free cell growth media, which Clear Meat has worked upon, and we have our own solution. But yes, across the world we have to come up with. Dr. Rohit, coming, because you're working from PETA and for PETA and with the government agencies, what in your opinion, the cultivated meat companies like ours should do to create more transparency, from the marketing point of view, from the tests point of view, from the packaging point of view?
So what I have seen while we are talking with the meat cultivated companies, some of the companies which have achieved that progress, to develop a new alternative mediums, and they have developed the cultivated meat. They've done the studies in the specific sunlights and shown the results. They have their data to share with the regulatory agency. But there are some companies which do not disclose the particular specific, that they do add these FPS at initial stage of development, and then progressively they reduce it. So these type of specific details should be disclosed with the regulator. IP thing is understand, and the regulator also understand the IP things when the regulatory, this pharmaceutical company also communicate with the regulatory bodies. But for the cultivated meat, when there is a lack of regulatory specific or clear regulatory guidelines, what we suggest the other companies who are working with the alternative is to develop a strategic roadmap. It every step, because I think in this cultivated meat development, there are specific stages where we need to have a check and balance so that the safety can be ensured at each steps of the product development. So for the each step of development, there should be consultations with the experts. So whether these studies is required, these specific tests is required or not, we don't have the clear regulatory guideline. These tests are required or not. Whether I have to go for animal testing for toxicity, whether there is an alternative available, can I use it? But these expert consultations should be taken at every stage of development, so that at the final stage, when we communicate these data or whole data or the test results with the regulators, we don't, again take back gear and then again have to conduct these studies. So it's a waste of time, and it involves a lot of money also. So if we take care at every stage of development with the consultations with the experts and the regulatory bodies, definitely we will go with the right path.
Understood. So to conclude what you're saying, at least the manufacturing processes, or if there are any, I would not say glitches, but if there is any specific thing which we are doing other than the IP, those things should be told to the public, to the regulators, to maintain more transparency.
Yeah.
So we'll because we are ending towards the panel, our panel discussion. I would like everyone to conclude, giving the closing remarks, and we'll start with Yoonchan.
Just to add on, Parul, to your point
Yes.
on what is to be done, because manufacturer's perspective are already shared, but from a let's say an independent perspective is create a database. That should be an essential aspect of the strategy. The reason is that currently there is actually no reference database available, and this database can be made for every muscle model, muscle cells, adipose cells, let's say required biomaterial, 2D, 3D culture requirements, whatever it could be. If the database is available, then then everyone will not reinvent the wheel. The things will be available, the research will be available for regulators also to take quick call. So that's one part that I would like to add on. And the second one is just like database, a central bank of sales, the depository of sales, so that the source is known source and this bank is a validated bank. So this is what I would say, to add on to the two requirements.
No, very valid points. Very valid points. And I think, what Japan is doing, I really like the way Japan has created JACA. So I'm not aware of any other, any other body like this. But at least I believe, that every country should have a regulatory body, very specific, very specifically for this cellular agriculture. And they all should join hands and create the database which you are saying, or one of the companies can rise up to that level, and then do this part. Also about the cell bank part, I believe what you're saying is correct, but maybe there can be many views on this. One is that we create a central system, or as one of the founding member in the company, our view is that we are creating our own in-house cell bank. So which helps us bring a lot of control, as well as lot of control on the supply chain, as well as control on the quality as well. But very valid point, ma'am. So Yoon, what is going to be your closing remark for this discussion, and what should happen in future?
Yeah. So you mentioned about association like JACA. So there's a Korean association version of it. Also, there's an APEC SCA. There's a European association. There's a US association. So they all signed the each part they signed the MOU, and then they're working very closely. And for the safety and the food safety part of it, every single cultivated meat companies are surveillancing other companies. So everything that comes out from the news or the regulation application, like dossier application, all that, everyone reviews and then try to see what could be go wrong, what could be good, what could we take, what could we learn from it. So it's a self-surveillancing system that we are doing our best on each company, each scientist, just to prevent like one like incident could kill whole sector or kill most of the companies. So that's what we are doing, self-surveillancing between companies. And another part is we are trying to avoid like big pharmaceutical scandal back then, Theranos. So that's another part that everyone is surveillancing, that who is talking, who is lying about what their technology is, who is lying about what safety that they're talking about. So not only the regulatory party will concern, every single company is checking out other companies. I think that's gonna help in the future. You're muted.
Okay. So, Megumi, can you please give your closing remarks?
Okay, so I think we should stress that until we find out the potential and the risk, maybe the potential risk or potential benefits of this technology, we shouldn't stop. This cellular agriculture shouldn't be excluded from the list of technologies to promote. That's the thing that we always convey to ministries, politicians, and consumers. And strengthening the resilience of the food supply chain is a global challenge, and dismissing potentially viable solution to this challenge based on solely on like emotions and conspiracy without considering their implementation potential is very illogical. But having said that, we also think that the consumer communication part is really important. So as a closing, I would like to share some important aspects which was raised recently by the largest consumer organization in Japan. It's from the statement of the consumer organization, which was submitted to the Ministry of Health regarding the cell-based food. And what the statement says is that, of course, transparency is important, and it should include like the companies should disclose information as far as so that the external parties can evaluate the safety of it. And also the transparency on the which ministries, the transparency on the ministry's role, and also transparency on the terms and definitions. So sharing, like whenever you talk about the specific technology, you should mention clearly about the definition of the terms, which is also important. And the last but not least is that when we communicate with consumers, it's important to share with them what's the similarities and difference in the safety perspective compared with existing food, which can make the consumers understand much easier about this, how to treat this novel food in their daily life. So that's it. That's it from me.
No, these are actually very valid points, and I think the last point typically wants to say the nutritional valuation between the two parts, and which I think, as Yoon has said, all the companies are doing, and we should do more. And this can be one of the parameters, which companies should do more and more to create the transparency and acceptance of the product. Dr. Rohit Bisht, your closing remarks.
Yeah, so I have only two small points to share. One is we have well-established, time-tested biopharmaceutical backup we should use that so that more and more major biopharmaceutical companies should enter in this area. We do more R&D, and we will have a more good expert advice and feedback from those industries. Second, the regulatory framework, obviously it will be a joint venture, but it should not only focus on the regulatory framework development, but it should include the stakeholder companies to understand their concerns also, because it's India specific. So every country stakeholders have their own concern. So the stakeholders should be participated while the development of the regulatory body or regulatory guidelines.
Agreed. Dr. Nilesh, your closing remarks.
Yeah, so I think I would say that I am super excited to be part of a concept which I could give a simile to it. Stone Age, about 2 million years ago, humans developed stones so that they can hunt animals and eat them for their survival. And today, I think we are all looking out at those stones, that what stones we can develop so that next 2 million years ahead we'll be able to provide food to the people on this planet. So I think we are the early stage humans now on this planet for the next growth that is expected. So very excited to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This was very amazing. I'm gonna quote this somewhere now. So thank you everyone for giving your time, and it was wonderful talking to you all. To my audience, I would like to say that though we have got a lot of questions, we didn't get time to answer all of them, but we are going to answer all of them on our LinkedIn page. So please follow that. Thank you everyone, and it was really nice, catching up with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day. Thank you all of
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Now we will move ahead to our next session, which is going to be on protocols, the IP protocols, and I'll ask the team to move